I have a question about. My question is, our next meeting is scheduled for the first week in May at the middle school, and yet I see in, actually, I'm looking at the minutes, and the minutes say Torrington Middle School, but the agenda today has moved that meeting to the high school and flipped those meetings. Is there a reason for that, or is that just a typo?
No,
in the agenda?
There is a reason for that.
Yeah.
First, it's like, why are you looking at me? Because this is Shelley's first time. We're gonna have her be in June. We're gonna have the high school go in May. We're just doing a flip flop, not a big deal.
So Shelley will see what the,
Yeah, exactly.
drill
What the
is
set,
and-
exactly. Give her, she gets to see the secondary. She gets
Pretty
to
much
see,
the
she's
same
here
as it is
tonight.
for
She
the
gets to see
elementary.
elementary, gets to see secondary, and then we're just doing a flip flop.
okay, so I suppose.
And it's not just Shelley, it's the whole team.
I suppose we can do that.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Okay. Questions on the minutes? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Ellen, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have approved the minutes. That's where you might get it.
Yeah, good call.
Okay, anyone here from the public want to speak? I'll read the spiel if there is, otherwise I will save us the time. Anyone from the public?
Any online?
I don't want to speak, I'm waiting. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, John.
Okay, Southwest School Report. I'm going to start just by saying that as I do in all these meetings in the buildings, showed up this morning and a chance to see the buses unload. And Dr. Buchanan was so good as to take me around and show me some things that are going on. I'm sure she will have things to say about the things that we saw. But in general, and I say this all the time, it's true all the time. What I saw was an orderly school with classes being held, students doing what they were supposed to, and everything working the way it was supposed to. Very good atmosphere. I was very happy, not at all surprised, but always very happy to see it. Elementary schools are fun to be in, and maybe, I'm sure they are, for the kids too. Kids were getting off the bus, they were as happy as one would expect them to be. Anyway, I'll shut up. It's getting done. Dr. Buchanan, if you would, please. What's
Okay,
going on
thank
here at
you.
Southwest?
So yes, we did start this morning. Actually, Mr. Kisco got to see our daily routine of, we take the time to do morning announcements live from a different homeroom every day, and the student council leaders do the announcements with me. So that's a great thing that we started this year. So it's nice when the students get to lead. We continue with our weekly celebrations. Students recognized on our buses for the positive behaviors. So every Friday we have our weekly drawings. Students also earn tokens every day in our cafeteria and at the end of the week. It's the homeroom that earns the most tokens. They get the Dragon Trophy, which is right behind you. That's it's Mrs. Mooney's homeroom earned it this past week, so they house it this week. But you've heard about the famous Dragon Trophy, and now you get to see it. Our DLC students, actually, they are the ones using their vocational training to help tally all the tokens for us on a daily basis, which is just one of the many things they do to help out. We also continue to pay for the Gratitude Dragon. Staff members take the time every week to recognize a colleague and thanking them for doing something that really helps all of us, and we serve as role models for our students. So what are they doing positive that serves as role models for our students? And we get to thank them publicly, and they get the smaller version of the dragon. Our Drum and Dragons, they are really enjoying their new adaptive PE class this year, and we're planning future performances. Their performance was actually in December. It was incredibly well received. We have a long-term sub who's taking over as Mrs. Castellano, still out on maternity leave, and it's still going very smoothly. It really is a lot of fun. Let's see. Winston, our therapy dog, comes every week as well, and he goes into our programs. He also goes into the gen ed classes. He is a huge dog. He's an old English sheepdog poodle, and he will stand above you when he stands on his hind legs. He's that big and is such a gentle giant. So everybody loves Winston. We have his picture of him, I believe, out on the new display that's in the lobby. So we have our new television display showing pictures and announcements. Our STAR testing is complete. We're going to pleased to show you the growth that you'll see more later. We finishing up data team meetings this week. So we're looking at all the individual student data, and our intervention team is going to be building rosters for our next cycle of tier 2 and 3 academic interventions. And we're planning field trips. Nutmeg Symphony's coming up. Culper Spiring will be an in-house one that we're going to be doing. We got the run up at the high school that will happen. We have the kids marathon that will be happening on that Sunday. We're planning our field days and a joint field day with Forbes and my school going up to middle school again for them to get together. So that's it in a nutshell. How's that for a fast
Thank you. We
presentation?
appreciate you. Our questions doesn't by any means do justice to what's going on in this building, but
So nice to hear.
anyone want to ask specifics? Yes.
I'll just echo, I did get a chance to come up and tour the building with Dr. Buchanan a few weeks ago, and echo a lot of the things you said. It was a great environment. The kids were having fun, and the support they gave each other, even in the excitement for those morning announcements. It was a great environment. It was a lot of fun to see just the engagement and even the staff.
Our
with those
staff is
students.
working so hard every day. So we
Yeah.
have an amazing staff.
I got to stop in. I was there early enough to see the end of staff meeting quickly. I was doing a PTO headed thing, and just the overall morale of the team and the excitement was just great to see. They all get along and they were excited for things going on, sharing things. It was a great environment. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
taking the time to give me the tour.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. President. Distinguished alumnus update. You want to do that? So or should I?
Why don't you do it?
I get to do it. Thank you. Committee met at 5:30, looking at the applications that Mrs. Ferguson had put together for us, and we made a choice, which will be announced once the person has been contacted and just we confirm that they will be able to attend and receive the award. So, with any luck, that should all be able to be announced at the next board meeting a week from tonight. So, okay. And again, thanks to Mrs. Ferguson for getting all that together, doing all the work, and making it so easy for us to do our work.
Quite well.
K5 update. Okay, who's this?
You got the whole team. Rachel's actually displaying it for us up there, so you may just have to turn around if you don't mind. Sorry for the inconvenience.
And
But you do have a copy in
Yeah.
front of you. Yeah. Sorry. But this was a collaborative project. All of us worked together, including the Office of Teaching and Learning, and we are keeping it succinct for you. You can go ahead, Rachel.
So I have the pleasure of talking about some of the numeric side here.
Yeah, just, there we go.
So what you'll notice here is we've got two tables. One is reading, one is math. And you'll notice our three intervals that we've done our universal screener. One was in the fall, one was in the winter, and one just recently happened this spring, just a few weeks ago. What you'll also notice is that we are taking the universal screener for STAR probably about 4 to 6 weeks earlier than we did last year, which I've got to say at the end of the day, you wouldn't expect as many kids hitting those grade level targets and end of the year expectations as early. So we're really excited about some of the progress that we're already starting to see and the work taking traction.
I'll just jump in. The reason for that shift in the timeline is because we have to do the state testing.
Mhm.
And we felt like all we were doing is just testing our kids. So that's why we backed it up.
Very much.
Yes.
And that was from feedback from our kids and from our staff as well. And we tried to be responsive in kind of their feelings. So what I'm really proud of and excited about is that last column where you see that difference. Truth be told, looking at the reading isn't as high collectively as the math, but we also know that the board and our district has made a big initiative in looking at our new reading program. So we're excited about that. But just even the growth and the movement that we're seeing for kids, the fact that we started the year with 30 to 40% of kids on grade level in reading, and now we have 50 to 60% of our students at grade level expectations. It's a tremendous a testament to the work that our staff does every day.
And just something to note about first grade. First grade has never taken STAR before. This is our first year attempting STAR with that early of a grade level. And we just kind of dipped our toes into the math world of STAR. And it is a computer-based test, so there's a bit of a learning curve for the staff and the student. But it was their first year trying STAR in first grade.
So the nice part is when you get to the right, looking at almost 70% of our kids in math, which we know math historically and also district-wide has been a little bit more of a struggle. To see 60 to 70% of our kids hitting those benchmarks on STAR gives us some hope and gives us some excitement about the trajectory that our kids are having in terms of that, what is now a 5-year implementation for Bridges. So it's making it some huge headway there. Exactly, and we're getting closer to that 80%. So this was our year-to-year comparison. Dr. Deacon did a great job at kind of highlighting those cohorts so that you can see where they left off in second grade and where they are now at in terms of third grade. And just the movement that we're seeing for not just our kids within the year, but even year to year as well. So seeing some of those major upticks, we're noticing in our classes, we're noticing it with the unit assessments that we do, the intervention work that our kids are getting and receiving on a day-to-day basis and the coaching that our teachers get. But the impact it's having directly on our kids, whether you're looking at a year-to-year comparison or also on a within the year, our kids are moving and shaking and it's fantastic to see.
If I may, just interject quickly too. Not only the cohort data, seeing students who were in second grade last year, third grade this year, for example, but if we look across second grade, for example, if we look across all grades, we can see that our tier 1 instruction in each of those grade levels is improving greatly because there are more students reaching levels of proficiency.
6 weeks sooner than they were previously.
True.
Great point.
Yep, because those numbers would only be that much higher had we taken it when we took it last year too, which is exciting. So I know at one of our recent board meetings, we talked about growth. 65% is kind of the district target and STAR's target for students making their yearly progress of what is considered to be optimal for schools. So the fact that we are anywhere from 70 to 80% and in 5th grade for math at 90% of students hitting their projections, that's absolutely amazing. And when we consider that we're taking it again that 4 weeks earlier, our kids have really made some major headway this year and really been able to close some achievement gaps. And we're excited about it.
And again, remember that first grade, they were using STAR testing for the first time on technology, which was relatively new for them. So we expect that number hopefully will.
And they haven't been in school for quite that long either.
True. They're first graders, they're 6.
Yeah.
So.
And also they started rather high too at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, sure did.
So that changed the numbers.
The next slide is our intervention information. So across all 4 schools, we have interventionists at the K3 level. We're simply larger. So we have about 6 interventionists at the 4-5. You each have 3 interventionists. And across all 4 schools, 652 or 37% of K-5 students in Torrington Public Schools have gotten at least 1 cycle with an interventionist, either reading or math, or some students have had both. These numbers are tier 2 and tier 3. So when we're talking tiers in the world of education, tier 1 is your general classroom instruction. Tier 2 can be by a classroom teacher and often is done by a classroom teacher, but our interventionists also pull out and do tier 2 intervention in reading and math. And then tier 3 is just a very smaller group with typically a more qualified instruction coach, usually a reading specialist, and more intense intervals, so 4 times a week, groups of 2 or 3. And these are the numbers of students that have access to intervention this year. And I think the intervention piece is a huge component to the results that you just saw.
They are busy people.
As far as coaching goes, the majority of our teachers have participated in at least 1 coaching cycle, 80 doing an ELA cycle this year, 46 doing a math focused cycle this year. which is a huge number of teachers. I know we had a discussion during budget regarding coaching and the benefit of coaches. We all value them at the highest level in each building. They really work directly with teachers, but based on student data. If you want to forward to the next slide, I'll explain that a little bit more. This is just a sample of what happens. So typically a coach will meet with a teacher and look at their student data and find an area that students need to grow. So the sample on the left is a kindergarten classroom that is working on that particular standard there of students demonstrating an understanding of spoken words and syllables and sounds. And the pre-cycle data, they collect like pre-data before a 6 to 8 week cycle where the students are. And then they set a plan, they co-plan, they co-teach, they model lessons, they work with individual students, they progress monitor. And then at the end of the cycle, they retake the data. And if you're looking here, emerging, developing, meeting, and exceeding, within that 6 to 8 week focus cycle on this particular standard, look at the amazing growth that the group made. And then on the other side is the same thing, just a 4th grade example. So all of our coaches do student data-driven coaching. So it's not based on strengths and weaknesses of the staff, it's based on strengths and weaknesses of the students, and then how to help them grow. And the end result is not only do the students grow, but the teacher grows.
Does everybody understand this, the table, around the table? Yes. So when we started, right, there were 56%, so more than half the kids were emerging. And by the end of the cycle, none of the kids were emerging. I'm overemphasizing that.
76% were exceeding.
Right, exactly.
In that particular standard.
Right, right.
And then the same similar outcome in the math at 4th grade. So the cycles are intense and focused, and they are, a lot of work between the teacher and the coach to make sure students are growing and achieving. But it's really focused work on figuring out what data do I need to analyze? How do I need to restructure my groups? Are my groups appropriately grouped? That's all of the kinds of conversations that they're having. And then what strategies and instruction do I need to provide to improve this particular skill? So even though we said all of those teachers had at least one coaching cycle, when they're this focused, that's why we all said I'll take 5 more coaches, you know what I mean? Because there's so many areas that we can continue to grow. And I think this is another huge reason why you saw those scores at the beginning of the presentation.
And these are only 2 examples. I have this data for every single coaching cycle that has occurred this school year. So if you wanted to in the future, allow me, or probably be a 3-hour or more presentation where I could share, all of that data with you. But I didn't think you would want that, Mr. Kisko. So I just shared, we decided to share 2
But the
examples.
data is similar in most of the examples.
Absolutely, yes.
And as you walked through today, Mr. Kisko, you saw a coach and a teacher working together in the classroom.
Yeah, I just think it's so exciting and powerful when you look at, it's the same 100%, right? But when you watch that 100% shift from emerging up to exceeding, it's just, I don't know.
And while these cycles might happen once, this is learning for the teacher, for the coach, for the kids that carries on. So the next year, this won't be an area that the coach will have to focus on with that particular teacher. Again, they'll have learned this, they'll do this, they'll have the tools, and then they'll find another area that they can focus on to improve for the next time around.
Go ahead.
So attendance is mine. LEAP, that I'm sure you've heard about, our LEAP visits have been extremely successful. About 80% of the students in grade 1 through 5 have improved attendance as compared to their attendance last year. Yeah, kindergarten's not in there because we don't know what their attendance was last year. So it probably wasn't there. But really, this is happening through visits to the home, Zoom meetings with families, phone calls with families, a lot of outreach from a team of people that are really able to approach the families from a very positive outlook to go into what can we do to support you, how can we make sure that your child gets to school whenever they're healthy, and that we want to help them to be excited to be here in school. So they may come back to us sometimes, the LEAP people, and say, at this meeting, mom said that they're having a problem making friends, or, whatever it is. And the things that they can help the student to be more comfortable and happier at school and want to come. But honestly, at the age our students are, usually it's not the kids that don't want to come to school. It's something else that's getting in the way, and they can help with that as well. Attendance team meetings, we have, I'll say regularly, but that's an understatement. We have them very, very often. And we have a team, in my building, at least, we have 2 people assigned to each grade level. We pour through the data, we look at the kids who their attendance is worsening and those that are improving. And we talk about what our next steps are going to be. We have clearly outlined when we send a letter home, when we make a phone call home, when we ask for a parent meeting, and all of those things to encourage the parents and the kids to make sure that they come to school. Again, balancing out germs, stomach bugs, and all of that, which get in the way, but we want to make sure that when they are healthy, they're here, and at the same time, they understand that, if you have a fever, you can't come to school. So we do all that. And really the teachers play a huge role in this. This year, at least at Vogel, was the first year that we really have one document where we put all of our notes and we make sure everything gets in there, separated by teacher. So if the teacher makes a phone call, they put it in there. If somebody from the attendance team makes a phone call or sends a letter home or has a meeting, that all gets into that same document. So we can all track by teacher, by student, what progress we're making with them. And we have attendance data meetings, which are all part of those, where we have those discussions. Student and parent attendance contracts, that's not something that we generally do with students at the K-3 level, at least in my building. But these are.
We're doing that here, and I will, like, our social worker will sit down. We'll get the parent and the child together, and it's like, okay, you didn't come to school like 4 out of 5 days in the past. We're going to try to get you to show up 3 out of 5 days, and then 2 out of 5, opposite. We're going to increase it slowly increments. It's a challenge, but there's so many hours and time that go into meeting with the families and drawing out what's the individual need for that child to get them there, and what's happening with the family to help them with the supports they need to get their child here. And sometimes it might be they're even showing up a little later, but they're getting here. So we're trying any and every strategy to improve.
Similarly, back to intervention, students who are in intervention, if they have attendance issues, we typically give them an intervention goal that goes home in a letter with families and an attendance goal. So they're not precluded from being in intervention, but they have 2 goals that they're working on while they're in the intervention cycle.
So that very similar. We don't have the contracts as much, but we will have goals for students. We talk to the parents about how we can support them. And a lot of times those conversations lead to other ways that we might be able to support and help out families as well that are perhaps struggling in another area. We also have calendars that go home where one of the ones we used at Vogel is where kids would mark when they do come to school each day, and they would keep track of it for themselves, or the parents would help them for that. And then Rachel, if you could go to the next slide. This is the attendance support card that we have where district-wide, that happens to be Torrington Fords with Tori waving at you. But these are cards that went home so that parents or students, if they're a little older, could track the days that they missed and aim for less than 10. So that's what I have for attendance. Ready, Rachel? Thank you.
Okay, so this is a response that we did on behaviors. There's a lot that we do to address behaviors tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 levels. Our teachers handle a great deal in their normal classroom management strategies. We do have assistance through our RBTs going in and collecting data on different students, gen ed and special ed, depending where we're needed to look at the different individual students. But we wanted to share with you the results of our teachers giving us feedback on all the work. So all 4 of our schools have surveyed our teachers and asked, have any students you work with benefited from support of our behavior team? And it was very pleasing to see all that blue response that the teachers are pleased to see there's some improvement on this? And then do you feel the behavior team positively impacts the student behavior management? We're heading in the right direction. It's got a ways to go. We're always going to keep plugging away because the students did lose a lot during the pandemic, and now we're going to try to get them back and see what we can do to keep them engaged.
To give you an example,
Mhm.
this is one of the narrative pieces that really spoke to me in terms of what one of my staff said. Having behavioral students in my homeroom, these students have had wonderful support all year long, given by the behavior team. The needs and goals of these students have always been given in a caring, attentive manner and help them be successful everyday efforts. Like, that's the kind of environment that our team collectively kind of wraps around our students to make sure that they're having good days and being able to get their learning in each and every day, which is.
And there's so many strategies that are put in place, just like we did with individual contracts for attendance. We have individual contracts for behaviors.
And just like we have attendance team meetings, we have behavior team meetings where the team meets and talks about all of the students that have active behavior interventions in place and the progress or lack of progress, and then making adjustments based on what we talk about and the data that's collected on each of the individual students. In addition to that, part of our SST process, similar to academic, teachers are invited to SST meetings or student success meetings to talk about behaviors, and then we review plans, come up with new plans. If a teacher says this plan is not working or it's too hard to manage, we revamp and redo until it's something that's doable for the teacher as well as working for the student, and always in support with the outside team.
It just, sometimes these behaviors can be the big things that you may be thinking of, but sometimes it's just, we might have an SST on a student that they're not completing their work. They're not completing their work. They might be sitting there quietly, but they're just not doing what they need to do. They may get up and get in line and do all those things, but they're not getting their work completed. And so they're not learning how they're supposed to. So we may have an SST meeting where a teacher comes in and we talk about strategies to help with that. So the behavior team isn't only being called to things that you think about, but to things that are smaller, and they encourage them and they reinforce them. The kids can earn a break with one of our RBTs, come on down and do some playing if they've done all the things that they're supposed to do, including getting their work completed, which of course is the ultimate goal.
The other part of this survey is we were able to collect some good feedback on what's working and what's not working, things that we might need to adjust based on what the teachers are seeing that are happening, and some of those anecdotal statements that they made. So we're using the information to inform our decision-making and planning for systems as we go forward.
So there's some examples of outreach, family engagement, student engagement that are happening at all of our schools, different things that we've been doing. We recently had a family literacy night here. We have field days we're planning, your kindergarten readiness fair. Our sister schools have done dance and auction and harvest festivals, and your sister
All four
schools.
schools are doing student-led conferences.
Yep. So that's just one example, and then there's some fun, lovely faces.
Here's the kids.
That's who we're here for.
Thank you. Questions? Discussion?
I have 2 questions. How long does it take a teacher to go through a coaching cycle? Because I found this data on the teachers that complete a coaching cycle and the growth they showed to be very intriguing. How much time commitment is it to a teacher to go through a cycle? Is it one afternoon? Is it 5 afternoons over the course of 3 months? How intense is it?
Sure, the goal is about 6 weeks. And they are meeting, the goal is at least 3 times a week. They're definitely in the classrooms every day. But beyond that, there is some hope, a commitment to planning as well, because it's within those dialogues outside of the classroom that really propels the work forward. So co-planning together, classroom teacher and coach, is really essential, looking at the data, determining what steps do we need to do, what instructional strategies are we going to try when we go into the classroom. And then when coaches go into the classroom, there are a variety of techniques that they can use. Sometimes coaches are modeling lessons for teachers, specifically calling out instructional moves that they're using that teachers may want to replicate. Sometimes the teacher and coach are co-teaching the lesson together. So those are just two examples of some coaching strategies. And then there are conversations that follow the time period within the classroom to talk about, to reflect on what had happened. What did the teacher see? What did the teacher notice? What do we notice about the way in which students performed? And then make some decisions about where do we need to go next with instruction.
I just want to make a comment. At Torrington, we had 7 brand new, new to Torrington Public Schools classroom teachers. So our first cycle at Torrington was all of our brand new teachers just trying to learn curriculum. And so it wasn't quite as student driven as what we showed, but it was phenomenal because they were able to have access to a coach who knew the curriculum of every subject to help them kind of start off on the right foot instead of make mistakes and then have to undo things later. So it was valuable.
That's a great point. The role of the coach is very flexible and that we want them in coaching cycles, but there are also times as well where, for example, Literacy How has been coming into our district and been providing a lot of training, but not every teacher has yet been able to have access to that training. So the coach will go into a classroom and model a lesson that was done by Literacy How. So that might be just a one-off, if you will. So there are many different variations in which the coach can work with classroom teachers, but the preferred is the coaching cycle. That's where you see the most impact, but knowing that there are other
It kind of
ways
depends
in
on the
which
needs of the building. at the
coaches,
time.
yeah.
It's non-evaluative, so it's so well received by the classroom teachers and the dynamics of the coaches and then the teachers. There's such mutual respect. It's making a world of difference.
And the results are incredible. Are we coach constrained for more participation or teacher participation? Not in a bad way, just which is the constraint in getting more people to do it?
Coach constraint for
We
sure.
have 2
Yeah.
coaches for each building.
And I, just to kind of clarify a little in case this wasn't clear, is that this is not a coach comes in and says, today I'm going to coach you on X. The coach comes in, they talk with the teacher says, you know, I'm struggling with this, or I feel like my kids need that. They look at data, they see where the kids could use some support. So this is very, very teacher driven and student driven. So they're getting the support where it's needed in each room. So each coaching cycle with each teacher will look different.
Awesome, thank you. Can we do one more, John?
Let me ask Fiona's question first, and then we'll let you go. Fiona has texted in a question going back to the attendance, which I think, Michael, you were talking about. Peter, keep doing that. What is the plan for students that have exceeded the 10 days of unexcused absences plus the 5 extra days they can grant for policy?
It's 18 days for school year.
Yeah, it's 18 days by state law to be considered chronically absent. So that 10-day mark in our building, it's about where second letter is going to be going out. And it's about where we're going to be asking for a family meeting, ask families to come in. We sit together and we talk about what's getting in the way of your child getting to school. So it's very, very individualized. You know, if it's a student that had COVID and then the flu, or had some surgery, or we know the reason why they were out. The parents were doing a great job of communicating. Not much is going to happen after those 10 days because we understand what's going on. If it's someone we haven't heard from very much, we don't know why the student was out, or they don't have documentation. They went to Disney World, or just stayed home, or whatever. Then the meetings are going to look a little bit different. So, and then ultimately in the end, we avoid this as much as we can, but ultimately once the days really start to build, if we're not getting communication, that's when we do have to make referrals to DCF or other agencies and get support.
Also, chronic absence defined by the state is 10% at any point in the school year. So in September, it's 2 days. And then the target moves throughout the year. By the end of the year, it's 180. So if you look in Power School right now, we've been in school about 140 days. 14 days will be chronically absent. The end of next month, it'll be 15 days. So does that make sense? Every month we add a day.
That's where the 18 comes from.
So it's a moving target throughout the year. So a student can be chronically absent and then fall off the chronic absent list, which is a great progress that we've been keeping track of specifically at Torrington. And many students were chronically absent at some point in the year and are no longer.
Okay, so there's no specific plan. It's an individual approach that you take with
There are some thresholds, like the letters and the calls and things like that, but beyond that, it's, every child has a different situation.
Okay, so Fiona sends if that is the case, we have to change our policy. Ours is less days than the state. Is that?
But I think it depends on how what you're defining. So I'm not sure which she's referring to, but the state, in order to be considered chronically absent by the state of Connecticut, it's
By the end of the year, it's
by
18
the end of the
days.
year. So it's 10%, 18 at the end of the year.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Kelly. Kevin, your turn again.
One question on the intervention data. So we had a great data on the coaching. So you saw the cycle showed a lot of growth in student screening scores from coaching to the students. The intervention is direct staff to student. So do we have any data on how they did in comparison? Just to get an idea how those resources affect the students' improvement.
That's a fabulous question and a very.
Requires a short answer.
It really is a short answer. It's
It's really,
technical.
it's really hard to get that information because there's so much fluidity in intervention. You know, one student has 6 weeks, another student has 8 weeks, another student has 14. So it's
Very individual.
It's hard to
It's
say,
very
but the growth
intricate.
on one student is because of this interventionist, because they typically have paired goals. So if a child is getting pulled out for intervention, the classroom teacher should be matching that goal or having a SMART goal that's similar and also providing that intervention in the classroom. So really we tried to figure out data that would work to kind of show you that growth. But
it would be another 5-hour presentation.
That and
Truly.
also the platform, but also the platform that we use right now doesn't allow us to filter that way either, right? We look,
it would have to be manually.
right, we'd have to do it child
Right.
by child by child.
Because it's
so-
not like when you receive special education, you're in special education, or when you receive EL, you're in EL. It's much more
Flexible,
fluid.
yeah.
It's
You also
It
think about the other
changed.
factors. I mean, if there's a coaching cycle in the classroom of that student at the same time, that they're getting intervention, and then the teacher's changing how they teach, it's all the things that come together.
Or they're also an EL student.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
But to piggyback too is looking at the number of kids that are now at grade level and looking at that big move and that big jump. So many of those kids that were intervention were not at grade level yet and are now at grade level, which means that they're starting to move. To give you an example, 2 years ago at Forbes, we had 24% of our kids in the bottom 20%, okay, which is about 79 kids. This most recent time, we went through and we had 13% of our kids in that bottom 20%, which is only 40 kids, which means that we've cut it almost in half because of the amount of intervention support that we're getting. And that's what that number of kids, and you might not even yet be at grade level. Maybe you've moved from the 10th percentile to the 30th percentile, and you're getting closer, right? And it starts that ball rolling for a kiddo and gives them a better chance as they're moving forward.
I do track also, so I do track the number of cycles of intervention students have. I do track if they have any movement. For example, if they're receiving tier 3, the most intensive support, and then the next cycle they move to tier 2 because they've improved, or vice versa. So I do have a lot of that data that I could share.
And again, if you go back to the performance data, we said 37% of the students K-5 are receiving pull-out intervention. But currently in reading, still 47% are not meeting and 38 are not in math. So we're still not, all of the kids that aren't meeting aren't accessing intervention. So that's just like a budget plug. Please don't cut them. Because even with all of this intervention, we're still not meeting every student who's not on grade level with an interventionist.
That wasn't the point.
Yeah.
I was only asking to see what was working the best. And
The
what
typical,
you were seeing.
the typical model is the goal is for 80% of students to be able to demonstrate proficiency within the tier 1. So we still have some ways to go, right? We have, according to this data, but we saw with the math, we're inching towards 70% of our kids. So we have about another 10% to go in math, a little bit further in reading, and I'm confident with bringing in the comprehensive core reading program next year that we will see the same thing that we've seen in math since we've had bridges. So.
And it's interesting to point out just really quickly that we've now, somebody said it, we've had bridges for 5 years.
Mhm.
It takes that amount of time truly
Mhm.
to really start to see that kind of growth when you implement a new program. I'm not saying that because I think that's what's going to happen with reading. I think we've made a shift in terms of our instructional delivery model, so it's not going to be as complicated and foreign to our teachers. But it's not an easy lift to do that. So
The growth we're seeing is impressive. When I look at other districts, they maybe grow 2-3 percentage points a year. We are double digits. It's incredible the amount of work that everyone's doing with the systems that we've built within their district in terms of from Sue to me, to the principals, to the coaches, interventionists, classroom teachers. It's all working together. So it's been incredible under their leadership, Sue and Sue's. So it's taken us a few years, but we're really starting to see it.
Thank
And
you.
Laura, your work
Okay.
as special ed.
Anyone have a final question? Looking for one more question at the most. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Great report. I'm going to pass this down to Dr. Deacon, but the reading, Science of Reading made the New York Times, the front section, a whole page. They gave it
Again.
this past Sunday. So, and check that out and
again,
circulate it. Then. You're
They're
right, again, because.
they're
Lucy
copying
Clark-
us, John.
Is it a positive article?
Exactly.
Looking at Torrington.
They're right.
Absolutely.
like, what are they doing in
Well, they
Torrington?
were stalking you at one point, weren't they?
Yeah, for leaks, so now we're on the radar.
Yeah.
Okay, well, okay, thank you all very much. Great report. And social promotion and retention. This will be a preliminary discussion. We are rapidly running out of time if we want to get policy started more.
We
or less on.
will be brief.
And what I'm going to ask right now is that anyone who has questions about social promotion and the retention policy, get them to me and we will make that a topic in the next meeting in a couple of weeks. Okay?
So this has kind of evolved because we started out with the question about social promotion and it allowed us to kind of dig a little bit deeper. And in the meantime, we also met with our Alliance rep and we kind of posed this social promotion retention question to Greg Driscoll as well. Oh, thank you so much. So you'll have this in front of you and you'll have this behind you as well. So thank you, Sue. I'm just giving the promo, just the intro here. So the promotion, last we presented, Shelley did such a nice job providing the middle school retention, promotion, information. And then one of the board members asked, well, what happens at the younger grades? Well, then we started to look at retention because we have those numbers. That's easy. We talked to the Alliance folks. They're saying, well, we really don't want you to be retaining or doing social promotion in the ideal. What you should be doing is all the things that you saw that our wonderful K-5 folks are doing, because you're providing a foundation. You're providing that strong tier 1 instruction, you're providing interventions, you're providing coaching cycles, you're making sure that if students need EL services or special ed or 504, or you're doing everything you possibly can. And then during COVID, we've also had this wonderful opportunity through extended year, extended day, all those other services. So it all comes together. So hopefully our students are on track and are on grade level. And from what you heard this evening, we're getting closer and closer, right? So what we have for you this evening is really a focus on the K-8. We still do have the middle school included in terms of those retention numbers, because I agree with John. This is just, kind of giving you the foundation for where we're at. So when we looked back, we looked 2010 to 2011 in that school year in comparison to where we are now, over 10 years, 80 students were retained in K-8. And so the factors that are considered when we look at that, we use a Lights retention scale. And so for folks in education, you're used to that language. And we'll actually pull apart and give you a guide. You can look at that at your leisure, what Lights retention looks at. We go and ask teachers input, parent input, and we review exactly what we just talked about. Interventions, other supports, what else has been done for this child. So on the next page, we're gonna just keep clicking right along, right? We're gonna make up for lost time. So you see those factors, right? You see that the students, the sex of the students, the age, are they EL learners, physical size, and so on. You can read through all the way down to 18, which is any emotional issues they're having, or 19, any history of discipline problems. So the students who were retained year by year, when you look through, you see really there's that range. COVID was the blip in terms of 2019, 20, and then 20 to 21. We were kind of at a standstill, even the 21, 22. But you really see that up and down pattern, bringing you to that 80, those 80 students. What we found interesting was the next slide. So yes, because I know in previous meetings, even some board members were saying we think that there was one gender more than another that would possibly be retained. And actually not so much. If you look at it, girls 47.5% and then boys 52.5%. And then I think the next slide is very telling because you start to see that breakdown. So in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, you see the bulk of the students. And then you still do see, though, in that 6th and that 8th grade, where students have been retained, making sure that they're really ready for those next grades. So then the next slide is really about a count of race and ethnicity, just to give you the broader perspective. And you may think, okay, well, our EL students would be retained more often because they're really still learning the language. But really, there's a balance amongst our students. And remember, this is over a 10-year period. So 10 years ago, our demographics were very different than they are now. At this point, we're about half of our population is Hispanic Latino, so it truly has changed. So that accounts for that whole entire time. And I'm going to turn this part over to either Andrew or Sue because they're the specialists in.
Well, I think Andrew and I can do it together, right? We can
tag team a little bit.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Because this has been the bane of our existence in education. Kathy's nodding her head for a very, very long time. So do you
Yeah.
want to address this, please?
So sure. So I don't think it's a secret to anyone in this room that Connecticut, the state of Connecticut, is not doing school districts any favors at all, because children are allowed to enroll in kindergarten at the age of 4. They are not required to be 5 years old until January 1st. So this particular slide, what this really demonstrates is, and you can see it on your hard copy better, is that Connecticut is dead last. So Connecticut, out of all 50 states, is the state that allows children to register for kindergarten at the youngest of ages. And just anecdotally, and we're going to get to that maybe a little later, maybe I should save that story, that part of the reason that we see so many of our children actually coming to school at that tender age when they are clearly not ready to come to school is because the cost of childcare is so prohibitive that it's more than a mortgage for some people. It's more than rent. So folks, parents in many cases are forced to send their children to kindergarten because they know their children are going to have a safe place to go every day, right?
Right. So when we look at the next slide, when we were looking into the data of the 80 students who have been retained, I found that 36 of those students, or 45%, started at age 4. So almost half of our students were born within 4 months, right? September, October, November, December. It's a big number. And so I was so fascinated by this statistic that I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper into all of our incoming kindergartners to see if this is really a problem. And we looked back at the last 5 years and we could see that students who start at the age of 4 hovers around about 28%. So almost a third of our students starting school are not even 5 years old yet. And this also illustrates that our kindergarten teachers not only have students who are starting at 4, but if a parent does decide to hold their child another year, they're starting kindergarten at 6. So think about that wide range that our kindergarten teachers are faced with when trying to differentiate the instruction for our students.
And anybody, I just want to add this, anyone who has ever raised a child knows that the younger the child, the greater, the more important those, right, developmental milestones are, the younger the child, right? 6 months in the life of a 4-year-old is huge, right? It's huge. There's so much can happen in that short amount of time when you're that age. So we're talking about, as we see, you know, some of our kindergarten teachers here, it's yeoman's work, and it's, yeah. So we have folks who have worked in Torrington who have gone to the state legislature and lobbied very aggressively, please do something about this. I mean, I don't see it happening anytime soon. We have, you know, appealed to our own legislators here. Michelle Cook has tried helping us out.
So to get us back to retention and back on track,
Thank you.
it's no surprise that it's about 50% of our students who were retained that are part of those 80 students, right? They have struggled. So they struggled from the get-go, and that's what we're saying. So that's why we're bringing up all of this information. I think we can go to the next 2 slides. So we get to the
Yeah,
pie chart.
just took care of the next one.
There we go.
We wanted to know, we wanted to know where were students before they were retained. And less than half of the students who were retained, less than half of those 80, actually started their career in Torrington Public Schools. So more than half started somewhere else, in another district or from homeschooling. Some of those students also had moved within Torrington Public Schools as well. So that transiency can really play a part in why they had a loss of learning or may have needed to be retained. And on the next slide, we wanted to see what had happened to students after they were retained by us. What we found was that almost 83% of students who were retained by us, they then left the district. Only 13% of those 80 students, 10 of those 80 stayed with us after we decided to retain them. 1 or 2 went to homeschooling, and another was expelled, and 1 had transferred out and then had come back to Torrington. So this was, to me, alarming to see that the students that we had retained, their parents had decided to transfer them out of Torrington.
Can I just share, oops, sorry, go ahead.
Was it that, Andrew, or was it that it was a family that moved frequently?
It could
I
be
mean,
that
you
too,
know,
and we do
yeah.
have examples of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I
mean,
want to
wondered
share
that.
one of
Yeah,
those,
yeah.
just really quickly. Here's one example, and we collected many. Child started school in kindergarten at Forbes, was referred for special education, then went to Vogel, back to Forbes, then to Southwest, then moved to Winstead, came back to Torrington to Forbes, then to Torringford, back to Forbes, moved to Florida, now is at Torrington Middle School. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so if we could go to the next slide, and if we just, you know, these are other characteristics of our 80 retained students.
And just to highlight that the students that were retained, they have things happening in their lives. Many of these outside of what happens within the school walls. Like the example Sue had shared, with that student who was so transient.
And so luckily, in conclusion, if you look to our last slide, a lot of what we had already spoken about, what our principals at K5 had addressed intervention, coaching, all these wonderful strategies. We're hoping to catch those students. We're hoping to get them on Prego. We're hoping to give them supports, regardless of all the other things you just heard, whether they came in when they were 4, or they moved 7 times, or whatever has happened in their lives. So you can see for yourselves a lot of what we have on this list. We've mentioned before, we've been discussing, but we really take obviously our responsibilities very seriously, and we're trying as much as we possibly can to help these students be successful, regardless of some of the things that are out of our control. They are with us during that school day, and that's what's important.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. Who has questions? Okay, and as I said, anyone who has a question, please get those questions to me. I will forward them to administration, and we will discuss the problem, discuss social promotion and retention. I think probably most of our interest at this point will be in the higher grades, middle school and high school, rather than lower
Okay.
grades, because that wasn't something we even had in mind. But like the presentation on attendance a couple of meetings ago, this is very thought-provoking and very helpful. So thank you. Anyone else? Questions? Okay. System-wide focus areas, attention, engaging and differentiated instruction, et cetera, Anything going on there?
I think the elementary folks did a beautiful job, and then next month we get to hear about the high school.
Okay. Tag update.
We are right now kind of on status quo until we see what happens next week with our budget.
Okay. Alliance updates.
We did have our alliance meeting with our rep, and I did allude to that. I just wanted to give you the white paper, the white sheet, the one pager on CAPS. This is the CAPS Alliance District blurb that they put out every year, but they do update it. And I think it is so helpful and really does align with what we just talked about in terms of retention and students at risk. When you're looking at what comprises our Alliance students, we're talking about 44% of Connecticut's children. That's 226,000 students. More than 64% of these students are students of color, 66% are low-income students, 77% are English language learners. So you do see what the focus areas are for Alliance, and I just wanted to note that there is a huge push to have separate funding, not only for minority teacher recruitment, but also for universal pre-K for the very reasons that we just talked about. So it's just nice for you to have as a reference.
Thank you. Questions about this, comments about this? Okay, we are to comments for the good of the order.
Thank you so much. Those were both presentations tonight. I learned a lot. You've given us a lot to think about. Thank you.
Exactly the same. That was a lot of great information, and thank you for the thoughtful answers to the questions.
I am so proud of all my teams and all my leadership in the district. Thank you so much. Excellent job and great job. What's happening in the schools every single day in every single classroom. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Kudos to our administration at K-5 and all of our administrators. Great work.
Ditto. Well done, elementary team and Andrew and Sue and everybody. Good information.
Same thing.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Wonderful.
Great job with the presentations. It's so nice to hear good news and celebrate the great things that are happening. So thank you for putting all that. I know it takes a lot of time, and it's not really fun to be here on Wednesday night at this hour, but really appreciate all that you've done. And also the retention information is, and Sue's point about the 4-year-olds entering kindergarten. I know that our, principals of kindergarten, schools with kindergarten have long conversations with parents about your 4-year-old really is not ready to come yet. They need another year to grow. And I can't tell you how many times parents would say, and I'm sure you guys hear it, you're absolutely right. We know that, but we can't afford daycare. And so we want our child to come to kindergarten with the understanding that he or she will be retained next year. So I feel like some of those numbers are really from parents who just don't have the means to send their children to preschool. So all the more important that we get that universal pre-K in our district.
The other problem, just really quickly, is that the preschools do not allow a child to remain in preschool for that
Right,
second
exactly.
year.
Yeah.
So you don't have the option of doing that, because if the child turns 5 halfway through the year, it's like they age out of pre-K.
Pre-K, yeah, that's the other thing.
True.
If it's a federally.
If it's a
funded,
federally funded, yeah,
pre-K.
yeah, the private ones can keep them, but,
Yes.
yeah. So,
Okay. Ellen?
I echo what everyone said. Thank you, thank you. It's great information
Yes.
for all parties involved.
Yes, thank everyone for the presentations tonight. And I have a couple things to say about people who are not with us. One would be Carol Neag, who was in the paper today. Her obituary was in, very generous within the community. And she and her husband just were quite willing to extend themselves and do whatever they could to contribute to the community financially and with other kinds of support. And UConn School of Education is named after them. At that dedication ceremony, they gave a lot of money so that school could become a world-class school. The other person who isn't with us, it's for a more understandable or happier reason, I guess, Mrs. Richardson, who was on this committee and contributed for many years to the board and particularly to the functioning of this committee, as far as we're concerned particularly, has resigned, and she has taken a job which now demands a great deal of her time, and she had to leave the board, and we're going to be sorry she's not here, and we're going to miss her greatly. So that's about it. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second,
All in favor?
aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.
7:02.
Thank you.
We have Kathy and John, alternate. Jess is no longer, and Mr. Manglings. Approval of the agenda,
So moved,
Second.
Kathy and John, all in favor.
aye.
Approval of the minutes,
So moved.
Second,
John and Kathy, all in favor.
aye.
Anyone in the public? None? Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Fiona.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Policy 1011, facilities use.
So when we last met at Forbes, we had started to discuss this, and then it was decided that we should bring it back to district office, have another conversation, and then bring it back again to policy committee, which we've done. So and I'm going to turn it over to John in just a minute, but what you have in the packet is our current policy with the proposal, with John's proposals to update, okay, or to amend our current policy. You also have in your packet a shipment model policy, which varies from the Torrington BOE policy to some degree. And John can explain why he believes we need some additions to the policy. And then the schedule of fees is a whole other animal, right? We've been round and round about that, but we're gonna go around again, right? Yeah. So do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I got to spend a lovely day and a half, or day and a morning with the two lovely ladies here who we all sat and we went through this, and we kind of took my recommendations and we molded them into our policy as it currently exists. And you can see the strikeouts and the bolds where the changes were. These are the things that I did some extensive research with other districts and what was in their policies. Some of them used the model shipment policy and then had their own additions in as well, and others did not use the model shipment policy. Really the clear additions, I mean, simply stated was to increase the insurance liability coverage from 500,000 to $1 million. Every single school district that I looked at, it was $1 million. $500,000 does nothing these days. It's you can't even buy a home for $500,000. One of the things that we always seen at central office as an issue was that as requesters came in to request this policy, that they would not have the insurance coverage right in the beginning. So we would be granting them use of a facility without having the insurance coverage. And then a lot of times Erica
Has to chase people.
has to chase people for, so writing that into the policy saying, hey, listen, we want this at the time of the application. We changed C a little bit where we just clarified that a little bit more in the request of that a group renting the facility with 75 occupants or more would have to get a hold of the fire and police department and get a letter of approval of their event, which they would have to provide to us.
At their cost.
At their costs, and that would be paid directly to the city. One of the issues that we did have was there was recently a group, a soccer group that was renting our facilities, and I was shared with some of the videos of the exorbitant number of people that were in the facilities, and the only person in the facilities was just one of my custodians. That was a little nerve-wracking to me because at any point in time, something could have happened, and I feel like we would be putting one of our people in jeopardy because of that. So I really felt like this is important that, the police department might say, hey, it's a Boy Scout group. There's 80 people, no big deal. But the soccer group, they might say, yeah, you're gonna have 500 people there. Yeah, we definitely want to have some police coverage.
On C, it says occupants of more, that should be changed to or more, right?
Yes, that's a typo. Any group of 75 occupants or more, not
Oh,
more.
yep. Oh, thank you. Typo.
And I think we should just add Torrington Police Department, Torrington Fire.
D and E, we kept exactly the same. And F, we again made some changes to that to kind of clarify what that was. Initially, it said the board wouldn't need permission to use the school property, or we wouldn't exclude the members. But really what we wanted to is our calendars are so full of events that happen. And a lot of times these events are scheduled months in advance. So although the board and its members would take priority over the events, a request, and we do this in the office anyways, right? So if, for instance, the use of this facility tonight, a request form was filled out by the administration so that you guys could use this facility tonight. And this way here, it kind of keeps everything on track with what we're doing.
Yeah, it's just for record keeping so that we don't double book.
Right. Yeah, that would be the worst thing, right? If you guys wanted to use this facility tonight and we already had a book for somebody else, and next thing you know, there's 65 dancers sitting here ready to dance in here, and oh, wait a minute, that's a problem. G, H, I, those all remain the same. And going into fees, remain the same until we got to the letter B. And at that point, we talked about these nonprofit organizations. So it was just a matter of clarifying that they were truly a nonprofit organization with the 501c3 letter, just to provide us a copy. That's a simple request. We did strike some stuff out on the utilities fees.
Letter D.
And letter D. And the reason for that was because we looked at utilities fees change every 6 months at times. And so we would constantly be doing a reevaluation of facilities fees and then trying to figure out our square footage and how much per square foot. And it just becomes a daunting task of math and trying to figure out these fees. So we looked at some of the other districts. I looked at some of the other districts, and saw that they had a flat rate fee for the facilities fees. You'll see that in the fee schedule later. Initially, I had proposed it at 10, but going back and doing some math on square footages and stuff, I really feel like a more fair number was 5 for those facilities use fees. That would be electricity, water, sewer, all those fees that we have to pay every single month. E, no difference. F, we just added fees are subject to change on an annual basis, and that's really more so about in the fee schedule about not so much the facilities fees themselves, but contractually, we know that the union fees and costs for custodians go up contractually, and so we should be able to make those changes on those fees when the contract's up and the fee schedule changes. In restrictions, there were some changes, some substantial changes made here where we combined some of the items and removed some of the items and repositioned some of the items from the original one. B is actually in the shipment policy, and it's almost verbatim written the same way, where it does specifically spell out the use of tobacco, vape products, alcoholic beverages, and unauthorized controlled substances of any kind are not permitted at functions held on school property. That really is, you'll see that again in the shipment policy. And I really felt like when I looked at all these things that it was really important to make sure that you spelled these things out, because even in our, like what our union contracts, right, interpretation of what we've written is very different from different people. So we lay it all out and they really can't interpret too much into that. C, we kind of revamped a lot. A lot of this comes out of the shipment policy as well.
Well, we've embedded that in B, right? C. Oh, that new C.
The new C,
Sorry.
right, the new C. A lot of that came out of the shipment policy as well, and that really kind of follows the healthy school standards set forth by the state and whatnot to make sure that we're in compliance with that, especially if they're functions that involve our students. So any kinds of those functions, right, we have to be careful. And we've had numerous discussions about selling of, or not selling, but bringing cupcakes to school. Remember, we always used to have the school parties and stuff, right? So we just want to be careful about that. We're following those standards and that the policy is kind of going in tone with that. The one that we added in, and again, this is in the shipment policy as well, is the use of school buildings for games of chance for profit are not permitted. That is also in the shipment policy. It was never in our original policy. And even though it is against the law, sometimes you have to just make sure that it's clearly spelled out that, you know, even PTO is doing raffles, right? They have to be very careful about that.
Bingo, right? Bingo.
Bingo,
Yeah.
yeah, any of that stuff. It's
I know.
We did it every year.
the moving of the pianos and all of that stayed. So E, F, G, and H were all sort of untouched.
The next ones are all for the
Yeah, the next ones, I through M, those are all directly out of the shipment policy. So, you know, when we looked at this, some of these things I actually had written from looking at other districts and bring them in. And then we looked at the shipment policy. It was actually those school districts actually used the shipment policy. So I had them almost verbatim word for word on what they were in the shipment policy. So, you know, things about obscene advertising and you know, advertising and decorations that promote vape products or alcohol products, activities that are disruptive and violate the fire code, you know, very simple things that that I think needed to be spelled out in the policy a little better. And then obviously the last one, and again, that was in the shipment policy, was it talks about any violation of this policy, you know, can result in somebody losing their privileges to rent our school facilities. And that's really just to protect us and our school buildings, right? There's a tremendous amount of money that goes into these buildings, both from a maintenance and a staffing perspective, and you know, does some damage to our buildings disrupt school the next day, you know, so obviously want to keep a tight control on that.
There's a typo there too.
The extra Y.
The Y.
That's worth finding that.
Should it be at then?
Or by.
Protocols in place by?
Bye.
That's probably
Should be
by.
by, yeah.
Oh, by the school district.
Yep.
Right,
Got
and then
the
the,
B.
and then the shipment model policy, there are some things in the shipment policy that the board may want to consider adding to our policy or however we're going to do this. You know, if you're going to adopt shipment and then just, lift what John's done and move it in here or whatever, but as for example, shipment has a section in their model policy about eligible organizations and the priority of use, which we don't have in our policy, which we probably would want to consider given some of the current conversations.
And it's interesting, they only shout out to the Boy Scouts.
There's this whole section here.
Yeah, but it lists specifically the Boy Scouts here. And it cites it at the end for legal references. Why not Girl Scouts? I mean, why were they singled?
Well, that's the shipment policy. We're not looking at that, right?
Well, we're looking at that now.
Oh, yeah, you're looking up at the top,
First
Ellen.
read.
Yeah,
First
where,
read.
yeah, Boy Scouts of America or any other youth group listed as a patriotic society, right?
So it's about that
36,
Title
yeah.
36
Yeah.
regulation, which must reference Boy Scouts of America.
Right. But if you look on the second page of shipments, which is page 11 of
Right.
27,
Right,
eligible
right,
organizations,
right.
priority of use.
Yeah,
My opinion is that we probably should consider a section in our policy like that too, so that, right, when we look at our nonprofit folks. Yeah. But I don't know, Kim, do you want to weigh in on this? I mean, we've been going along and trying to look at adopting shipments. Are we better off adopting the shipment policy and then trying to move what John has added that doesn't appear here? Because I'm not,
Yeah, I mean, I
that's
don't
right.
really have an opinion. I think that would be up to the board to decide what's best. I think Shipman's model policy is formatted in a different way than, like, it has application procedure, then it has eligible organizations, and then it goes to the restrictions on school facilities. Ours kind of starts right at that restrictions on policies.
yeah.
Like that first whole component isn't even part of our policy right now.
Right.
So, that's why I said we couldn't really take all the work that John did, which I think is very thoughtful work, and him looking at all of the different districts and what they've done and what really works for us, and kind of put it into the Shipman model policy because it just didn't work. So that's why we really just wanted the board to consider. And then just tell us what direction you want to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if that's where the discussion is going, I kind of like our policy as modified by Mr. Barlow, except for the spurious comma in page 3. Unauthorized comma controlled substance.
I may have, here's a possibility that we could at least start with, is the rules and regulations really, to me, aligns with Shipman's restrictions on use of school facilities section. It's just ours is a little bit more in detail, because it's taken things that were in our original policy and all the things that John very thoughtfully added to the policy. But it's that application procedure and the eligible organizations and priorities of use. We could lift those two sections, put those ahead of our section on rules and regulations, and it would kind of work, I think.
I like
maybe,
that.
as a possibility.
Also, the legal references at the end, we should probably have in our policy also.
Yeah, we just have to, yes.
Just lift it and put it. So I think it's very important to have that cited as in.
Yeah, and every
All of
one
our
of the
other-
districts had those legal references at
Right,
the end of their
right.
policies as well.
Right, yeah, and that's very helpful in years to come when the regulations change, and that can be changed. It's an easy change.
Right.
Except for the Boy Scouts of America.
Yeah.
I know it's odd.
It is.
Well, there's a reason for that, and that was because of somebody rejecting Boy Scout use, but not other similar
Oh,
organizations.
okay.
So someone in Congress apparently was on the national committee and got that put in. Again, laws and sausages, don't want to see either made.
And also maybe the fees and other costs.
So the only thing with the fees and other costs is, in
Oh,
looking
we
at,
have fees.
and looking at the shipment policy, right? That we would just have to make sure that the way that they have it spelled out, categorized in fee would align with what you guys want to charge for fees and who you want to charge fees for.
Right, yeah, but we have it here. I have a question on the fees in A. So fees for facility uses will be charged to private enterprises.
Where are you?
Page 7 of 27, fees A, but on the Torrington policy, not the shipment policy.
Oh, I don't think that's the fee schedule. Is it?
But it says fees for facility usage will be
Oh, I
charged to
see, in the
private
policy.
enterprises
Yep,
in the policy.
yep.
So we don't, it looks like you're only charging private enterprises, any fees. That's how this reads and someone could interpret it that way.
We don't.
So I think that's where that discussion needs to happen about the fee structure that's in the shipment policy.
That's on page 12.
And maybe making those corrections and
The
then.
12.
But I'm
page
just
12,
saying, I'm
27,
just saying
right.
the sentence itself.
Right.
Well, Ellen, if you look at B
Right.
though,
But
right
look at page-
underneath it, it says not-for-profit organizations will be charged, and then it details what the charges will be for that. So look at B in that section where you are.
Yeah, I see that. I don't know.
I mean, I agree, it's very broad.
Yes. Can it just say fees for facility usage will be charged?
Right, as per the chart or as per the fee schedule.
Right,
Right, I think that's better because then it clarifies it in that document.
right. It's not just,
Right.
But I think that the spirit, I believe, of A, B, and C and ours is to kind of outline similar to page 12 of Shipman's,
Yeah.
that hierarchy, right? That all for-profit organizations are gonna get charged all for all the fees. The second one is the not-for-profit are only gonna get charged custodial, and so it's supposed to be akin to that tiered system, but I don't think it's all encompassing, and I don't think it reads correctly, so I'm
Right,
but
I like-
I don't think that you want to say all fees will be charged, because that's not the intent of the language. The intent of the language is that only certain organizations are going to get charged all fees,
right.
and then other organizations won't be charged all fees. So I think how do you want to say that? You
I
know,
like the shipment's wording.
Right.
Could we just put D in that section of fees and then just add John's comment about
Right.
a copy of his 501c letter?
And you'll have to also add on utilities, right?
Well, that would be associated cost.
Ellen, do you remember the meeting we had at the budget meeting? There was a big discussion about various types of entities, if they were nonprofit, what, if they were serving our students and what percentage of the
Right,
student body. I think that's gonna have to roll its way in here. So maybe this policy can just say, see our fee schedule, and the fee schedule can roll out what those restrictions and or what those qualifications are for the fees, because that's a discussion that has to happen before. If it's going to appear, this language is going to appear in the policy, we probably have to decide what we're doing
I think that's on page 12 though, John, or,
here, but I don't think
Yeah.
the board decided at the
right,
last meeting
right,
what we were going to do.
right,
There were a lot of ideas.
right, yeah. Right. I mean, this is the way it's always pretty much been done, I think, this schedule. I mean,
The way that it
The
reads in
shipment
Shipman
schedule.
yeah, I think so. I mean, I believe that. I
feels
mean,
that
that
way.
was good. Yeah, I mean, school-sponsored
We would know
activities
that
weren't
way.
charged.
Yeah,
PTO was never charged.
Yeah, right. Right. And one of the things that you guys had discussed about was that any groups that served, 10% or more of Torrington students, that
are
was something that they were.
That are
for
nonprofit,
not-
right,
For nonprofit,
right.
that we wouldn't charge them the fees.
because a nonprofit may not serve our student body.
Correct.
Right.
And therefore, we were, the idea was that the
Back and forth,
school
yeah.
funding would support the events that are serving our
Right,
students.
but we have some nonprofits who are also our community partners,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, of
But
course.
Who do serve our kids that we
Shipman
would not
says
want to be.
operating.
Shipman says any nonprofit in
Uh,
town.
Right, in town.
Only gets associated costs, but we wouldn't, the board doesn't have to do that. I'm just, that's how Shipman's is reading.
I only mentioned it because it drew out a
Yep.
heated discussion.
No, I recall.
I don't think it was heated. It might have been lively.
Lively, lively.
Spirited.
Couple weeks go by, it went
Passionate.
downgraded.
It's my favorite word.
Activities at night.
I knew you would, John. I knew you would.
10% of our students
Yeah.
would be this.
So,
Active ones who have a.
So you're saying under
that's okay.
associated costs.
I'm saying under
and
number
then
4
you
on
could-
12,
you
you could
could
break that into 2
stipulate-
subgroups and
Yeah.
have one that
Yes.
says
Yes.
who service more than 10% of our students, associated costs only, but who service, less than that would have rental fees and associated costs.
Mhm.
so this copy of the
No.
501c3, can that be on the,
Oh, okay. You're saying no, so, okay, no, they wouldn't pick custodian or anything.
In terms of those,
Associated costs are
Those-
just the
I-
custodial fees,
no,
right?
hang on a second.
Okay.
So the community partners who service over 10% of our students have not been charged.
Oh, okay.
And
For the custodians even?
because when we had a different contract, yes, they were charged custodial. But now the contract reads that we have more leeway and flexibility in terms of that, right? So for example, during the summer,
about May?
where the summer hours are more flexible and we have a custodian on duty,
Right.
we don't have to have it, like in the old, when we
Right,
were
right, right.
principals, right?
But if you have
Then
to call a
you-
custodian in?
Right, and if you have to, then you would have.
Okay.
to.
Okay.
Right, because that's the exception, not the
Right,
rule. But
Okay.
if it's under those
Oh, yeah,
structured times,
yeah, that
for
makes sense.
example, like with an ed advance, where
Yeah.
they're there from the 6 to 6 type of
Right.
program. And now you don't have to worry about those.
But you
pieces,
can
which is very
move the
helpful.
custodian's hours, which.
Right, which is
Okay,
very helpful.
That makes sense, yeah.
Maybe the policy should just say that you're only charged the fees if we incur the fees per the contract. Right, that's what you're saying. The group's saying that if a nonprofit can use the space during the day when our custodial contract does not require us to call somebody in, we're happy to give you the building at no cost and forget the fees. But if you do something that is at 8:30 at night or at 8 o'clock on a Saturday, where you have to call somebody in, I'm getting the vibe that we would want to charge them the fees for that. So maybe not. That was just how I read the room. So you'd have to write it based on the qualification of when we get charged, and that would be an administration thing. I don't know the answer to that. John started to go into it last week. When
Yeah, I
you get
think that
charged, and when you
it
don't.
gets a little dicey, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah.
Kathy's example, yes, because it would go over the hours. But in the case of like Hal, who also contributes so much in terms of funding to us, right? They're a community partner and they give us gift cards and they do all these other things and they take our kids to UConn and then we have student mentors and then we have PAL mentors and all of that. It's almost like
It's like in.
if we
kind.
were, right, it isn't kind, because if they were to charge us, we would just
Sure.
be going like this. So it's easier to say, you know what, we are helping each other with all of these programs and services. And so then, because they
Another-
also run basketball programs on a
Right,
Saturday.
another really good example is at Advance for summer school, the past few years when we've run these really, really ambitious summer programs and we've serviced 500-700 kids, we've partnered with Ed Advance and they've done wraparound. So they've done a 6 a.m. so parents could drop their kids off and they'd be with Ed Advance until summer school started. And then after summer school ended at noon, they'd go back to Ed Advance in our cafeteria and not have to be picked up till 6 o'clock at night. But our summer hours are done at 3. So they're helping us, you know what I mean? They are allowing us to really run this program effectively. So I think then the question becomes, and then we're going to say, oh, by the way, you owe us for, you know what I mean?
Partner.
Yes.
So you
Who
could-
who service 10% or more of our student population.
But sometimes it still runs
That's the
outside of
rarity.
The school.
the school
Right.
day.
Right.
But you could say community partners fall under the umbrella and are, they could be written. You'd have to figure out that tiering.
Right, that's why I think you have to do percentage, because it's huge.
Can the policy say associated costs may apply?
Sure, and then you would have the leeway,
Right, because you know
right, who they're servicing.
who
and
they're
what's going on.
servicing. So if you just put may apply by all of these except for the no rental fee or associated costs, would that work?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you'll add the 10% there, number 4.
Right.
Works? Okay. Mark, anything from you so far?
I'm just trying to follow along. I was, I was trying to figure out where the CIAC stuff kind of fits in the tiering. You know, like for the basketball
Sure.
playoffs and that stuff,
Sure.
like I was curious where they are in the priority list. But that was.
So that's a school-sponsored program and activity, because it's
Even though-
it's ours, right? If CIAC calls and says, we want to do this big promo, we're gonna have a special tournament at your school, then we're gonna charge them, right? Because then they're having all these different districts come. And our district may or may not even be in that playoff or that whatever. So yes, we would charge them.
Unless 10% of our,
Right, but usually, I mean, if you're thinking
No,
about a
I know,
basketball
I know.
team, right, I'm thinking about the
Like
smallest
the
or a
neutral
golf
site
team or
games and
something.
stuff.
Right,
Do they pay for those now, neutral site games?
I didn't think they did. I mean,
I don't think so, I don't think that they are,
I don't think so because
because we don't.
I don't
expect
think
to pay
we-
them, but-
right.
we had there was that big track tournament that they ran, and I don't believe that we charged them for that because our students participated in it.
It benefits our students as well.
No.
No more questions.
I'm happy with John Barlow's rewrite of our policy.
I have a question on the 75 person call the police and fire marshal. Should that be written to exclude school-based activities? Because the building is full of,
Oh, yeah, we
I
could
mean,
have
it's
a
full
movie
of
night with
people.
300
Right,
kids.
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have a
Yeah.
couple hundred, but when that happens, there's school administrators,
Right.
there's plenty of supervision. We hope.
Yes, good
Yes.
catch, Jeff.
Yeah.
That was the least self-serving. Didn't want to talk about.
Would the cost of that be so prohibitive that would stop people from using some of the facilities that?
I do not know what the police or fire department would charge for their cost. Obviously, if they feel that they needed to have a police officer at an event, or two, it's going to be probably based on the contract that the police department has on what their overtime costs are, similar to our custodians. I would guess that, yes, there would be could be some extensive cost in that. The flip side of that is, as I referred back to the incident where we had the soccer group in there, and there was a substantial amount of people in there. God forbid that somebody got hurt or we had an issue, right, is, and we're really putting our own staff in jeopardy by not having somebody there to protect our facility as well as our staff.
Maybe 75 is the part that detracts the accessibility of it. So I remember from an event we did, there was a period of time we were possibly going to have to pay for the police for a fundraiser pickup as COVID started. And I remember seeing the price from the police department for it. To your point, it would be very cost prohibitive if somebody had to pay. It was 2 officers at the time. It was the very, very start of of COVID. We had to do a drive-through situation through the high school to deliver chocolates, remember? It was very cost prohibitive. It was all worked out. The city helped figured it out and it was done. But I think 75 people and more, without knowing where the city would stand on this, I would be concerned that the number, the facilities way better than I would, but.
So I picked the number of 75 based on what I looked at for other districts. 75 seemed to be a number that several of them came up with. They were numbers at 100 and at 150 as well. So that's subject to you guys. This is my recommendation, but I'm open to if you
John,
want to change that.
does it have anything to do with what the capacity of the space is per fire code?
So yeah, now we're talking about a 5-hour-long meeting and John Kisco doesn't want to listen to me talk about that for 5 hours. I've heard that clearly before.
So it can't be written that it
Yeah.
it
so
has
it's-
to align with the capacity of the gym or whatever. It's.
So the fire department or the fire department and the police department look at these things really in different ways, even regardless with aligning with capacity. If we, when you look at capacities of our spaces, there are multiple levels of capacity. If it's just standing, if it's chairs, if it's tables, if it's, so.
Bleachers down.
Yeah,
There's
bleachers
furniture
down.
in the way.
Yeah,
There's furniture. All right, never
mind. Yeah.
Never mind, pass.
Yeah. But listen, I'm for, I mean, I in a way agree with Jeff. I 75 might seem low. I think that we can certainly increase that number. We would request on our new form of groups to give us an idea of how many students or people that are going to be involved with their group so that we can identify these groups that would need to provide that documentation to us from the police or fire.
If I could,
Yeah, go ahead.
how about if we write this a little differently and we say, if you're going to exceed 150 or 200 people, it's an automatic requirement. But you may be asked to do this at the school district's request anyways. So after the application is reviewed, we may ask you to go do this at our discretion. So at 200 and above, it's mandatory. Anything below 200 is at the discretion of the school district.
I think that's a good idea.
Because you said it was 500 people. I would be like, wow, I've been in a school with 500 people, and I certainly understand the concern. So that being said, 200 would probably be. Is that maybe your break point? We're like, oh, we would have to have some below that. You're right. Some kinds of events may be more likely to need supervision, but you would know what it is when it's submitted.
From my perspective, I think that maybe the 200 is a little bit high. I would look at the 150 as the cutoff. And because, if we are going to have 200 people in there, right, you're asking, and typically I'd have one custodian in there, and that's a lot of people for one custodian to manage. In the event that something were to happen or whatnot. So I think I would feel like 150 is probably that good number. So above 150, it's mandatory that you go seek the police, and the police might listen. That's up to them, right? They might say, hey, look, we got 175 people here and we know what your group is. No police coverage required. Then it's no cost out of their pocket.
Right, like a dance recital at the middle
Correct.
school.
Right.
Yeah.
Or a basketball game. Well, those
Or a
wouldn't be
basket-
required to do it.
Right.
But
Right, because it's except for
We would
school
accept.
sponsored.
So you want
Yes.
150 or more occupants, and then excluding Torrington Public School students,
Except excluding school-sponsored events.
school-sponsored events, okay, and below at the discretion of the district.
Yeah, however you worded that, but
Yeah, however you can wordsmith that.
Mhm.
Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Sound
Yes.
good? Okay, so let's move on to the fee schedule, which is gonna be another fun Do you have, just one other question. The paperwork that they have to fill out for to use the facility.
I just realized we didn't include our current form.
Yeah,
We did
I-
it last time, but we didn't put it in at this one.
Yeah,
But,
that's
I
okay.
mean, that one's good. That was just redone by them and I. so I
Yeah,
think-
can we add in the 501c3 piece
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so
To
that
the
they,
form.
Yeah,
so that it's just there
absolutely. So,
again, so that
right,
it
so
draws their eye?
the things, the way we changed the form, and once we get it all set, and we'll.
We'll
reprint
include it in the full board package.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Thank you.
include it. It's really, there's a lot of checkoffs in there, like, so for instance, this police thing or the fire thing, right? There are
Right, yeah.
checkoffs. Did you provide us with notification, a notification letter? You know, so there's a lot of things where there's not in my current form. So, so we wanted to make sure that we redid that,
Right,
so.
right,
But
okay.
you did want to add the indemnification and release form as part of our current, right?
Correct,
You
yes.
Right, the-
You wanted to do that, so we're gonna include that as well.
Yes.
The insurance,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Okay.
Could do that. Yeah, I could do that.
So on 17 of 27, that's the fee schedule as it exists currently. For the fees for all of these things, and you guys have seen this other fee schedule, because I did show this to you at the last meeting, and thank you, Marissa, for doing a fantastic job of making it look beautiful. And so
Everything in red is.
everything in red is the changes
Okay.
to that fee schedule. There was never a fee schedule in for the now new in-word of learning commons, library and learning commons. I love school districts. They love to come up with new and inventive words to call things. But so we did put a fee schedule in for that. These have all been bumped up a little bit. And they've all been, I gave you that spreadsheet before that kind of showed you all of the districts and what their fees were and where we landed in there, which was kind of in the middle of all that.
And with the custodial fees, it's also includes their,
So on the second page, 19 of 27, the custodial rates, what we did do is, and this kind of follows a little bit of our custodial contract, right? So for like when we call a custodian in, it's a 3-hour minimum. And one of the things that I wanted to add in here was the 30 minutes before and the hour after the scheduled time would be applied to the rental, right? Because if we're just charging the custodial fees for while the group is here, our custodians are staying to clean up after. They're coming in early to open the building and get things set up for the group. So if you take that hour and a half of time and now you add it into a group's rental, it really kind of meets that 3-hour minimum, so to speak, of what we would be charging custodial fees for. And that kind of follows our custodial contract on what we charge for, what we get, what we have to pay them for, like a call in for an event or something.
but does this include their benefits?
It does not include their benefits. This is only based on their contracted time.
This is what's in the contract.
That's what's in the contract for what they would get paid at a time and a half or a double time.
So it's costing us 15% more than this. Probably.
Right.
That's right. That's why, thank you.
You're welcome.
But not everybody makes the same one, like some guys.
It's the numbers are so tight between what a head custodian and a night custodian makes that it's almost identical, because remember, they get a differential for night.
Okay.
So they're pretty close on that pay schedule, really within $1 or $1.50. So it kind of seemed, let's take the higher of those two pay schedules, make it that, and the only difference in it was really minuscule.
I would still suggest we add the cost that it costs, but HR could tell us what the extra tax cost is.
So typically fringe percentage for benefits is attached to their base pay, and this is typically additional compensation, so it's not. I would want to talk to the lawyer about that, because I don't know that it'd be customary to include fringe percentages.
It's not
and these
fringe,
kinds of
it's
not like
social
that.
The
security,
benefits. though,
Right, so
right.
they're
not the
Yeah.
benefits really, it's the,
Extra tax.
social security, well, do they, because I'm
Yeah.
guessing they're subject to social security and Medicare.
right, which
They
the
are.
So
district
that's
has to match.
7.75%.
Right, but those taxes, this would be before those taxes.
Right, so
Right.
I'm suggesting we add those because those are a cost. They're not a benefit. They're an actual.
They're a
tax
cost to the district,
To the district.
because the district has to match.
We'll just check. with
Yeah,
legal,
I don't,
that's all,
I've
'cause we
never
don't-
known that to be the case in these kinds of situations.
So we'll just check,
Yes.
okay, because we can refer back.
But just because that's the fee, that doesn't mean that that's the fee that we're paying the custodian. The custodian is this fee plus their,
Payroll
it's not
tax.
benefits, it's payroll taxes.
That's the fee that the custodian would get.
Correct.
This is their rate.
That's
they
their
get.
Correct, but if we
That's
add
correct.
the fees, the payroll taxes,
Yeah, that's.
that wouldn't be, they
So
would
you-
still get that base.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know.
you're
I'm
saying
not
that-
understanding.
Move the number up a little bit to give yourself some.
Like 15, right,
Like go 50 and
50 and 60.
65.
right,
Sure, close. That's a start. Yeah. Exactly.
Just to.
Yeah.
Just to cover.
just to cover
Maybe
it.
this is a Scott question too, because that might be
Yeah,
more in
that may-
Scott's
yeah,
wheelhouse than
yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, this is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right, right.
This is above our pay
Just like
grade.
over
yeah,
time.
that's
I
not,
don't-
that's
I don't
not,
understand.
I don't
Yeah.
understand this.
I don't understand that, how, that doesn't,
Why
yeah,
would
I
they
thought it was the
have to-
opposite.
When
so
we,
it's-
when we
Well,
have
because-
teachers return for after hour work
Right.
and they get paid hourly, we don't
Pay
build
anything extra.
in
Yeah.
benefits.
No, we're not building in benefits. It's a cost to the district. It is, because you have to pay 2 times social security plus Medicare.
Which we don't.
You
on
have
most
to match
teachers.
that.
But you don't.
The
on
teacher
Right,
teachers,
side, we
right.
don't.
You don't
because of
on
their-
teachers, but on,
on
Custodians.
staff, we would.
yes.
That's a Scott question then, definitely.
Yeah,
That's not my
yeah,
area.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and we'll just check
Yep.
with legal too,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
so that we
Yeah,
understand it better and. But if you want us just to raise the rate a little bit, that's fine.
Just to
for
cover-
whatever
Just
reason,
in, just
I
in
don't
case.
think that-
Right,
to just,
yeah.
I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, so,
80%.
okay, and we'll ask to see
It's a
if
cost.
legally it has to be exactly what's in the contract.
Yeah, that- yes.
Versus,
That's,
I think
that's why I
that's
was-
the
we
issue.
just had that discussion.
Right, so we'll just ask to see if it has to be what's in the contract, or then if the union's gonna come back and say, oh, now we're making $50 an
Right.
hour for overtime.
Yes, yes.
So that's the
That's
question,
gonna
so
be the
we're
problem,
just,
yeah, with the
right, we're
contract.
just gonna check, right,
Right.
with legal,
Thank you.
okay? Not a
We're
big
not-
issue, not a big deal.
Just to clarify, we're not trying to change the contract. We're
No,
not trying to
No.
give them more.
Totally understand.
Okay,
Totally get that, but if this is listed wrong, does it force us to then change the contract because
And
we've
pay them
listed it?
more.
Exactly, that's, we just need to make sure of.
Correct.
That's all. That's why
Okay.
we have to check with
Gotcha.
legal. Because could become a contractual issue.
gotcha.
So, and we don't know that. That's a good question. So we'll
Okay.
find out.
Okay. So I would like to see all those changes and check with legal and bring it back next month.
Absolutely.
Good? Everyone in agreement?
I just have one more question.
Sure.
So you're renting out the turf field for $375 for for how long?
That's a, that is, and I think it needs to be spelled, I believe that's, these are all
An hourly fee?
hourly.
So the heading should be up there hourly rate or something.
Well, for the gym, it's by the hour.
No, I don't think it is. No, I think that's the one time, sorry, I misspoke. It is the one-time use of the field. Now, mind you, the $375 in one-time use of the field, there were some districts that their one-time use of the field was $1,500 and $1,800 for the simple fact that I think they wanted to deter groups from actually using the field because of the amount of money in maintenance and the cost of that.
And that came up at the last meeting. That's
Correct.
especially as we build this new beautiful facility.
So it was interesting because the rental of the field lights was always in there. There was always a rental of field lights in there, but there was never a rental of the field. So we added this rental of field in there. And this
So it's
was,
$3.75 an hour?
no, that was a
That's the
one-time
flat
fee.
fee.
And if you, right, and
If
if,
they're there 3 hours or 10 hours?
right,
Okay,
You could make it per block. Okay. You could put in parentheses next to it in 3-hour blocks, an exception to the rule if you thought that was, I don't know.
If it's a soccer tournament and it's 8 hours.
Yeah.
right? So you say.
It would be
4
exempt
hours or
anyways.
whatever.
this is your rental fee,
True. but
unless it's an
yeah.
outside group.
But yeah, the lights, I remember Mario telling you were expensive to run.
oh, yeah, the lights are a pricey thing to run, and the field itself, I mean, there's, just the field turf maintenance costs the district $6,000 a year.
Yeah.
We're putting money aside, every year we put money aside to come up with that money to replace that field. It's $1 million carpet is what's out there. It's very expensive.
I know.
So, I kind of picked these out as numbers based on what I saw in other districts, but certainly, whatever you guys want is what it will be.
I think it's good we keep things accessible. We do pride ourselves on making things accessible in this community, but I don't think anybody would argue with you, John, if you thought it was appropriate to put a time limit on some of our more maintenance intensive assets. So like a turf field, the lights that cost a lot to run
Well, and
up to
I
a certain
think,
number of
I think a
hours.
lot of school districts, when you saw the fees go up, like in gymnasiums, it was because the most expensive floor in your school is the one that's in the gymnasium. We just restored a couple of floors just recently at the middle school, the two there, and Vogel Wetmore, and that restoration process for those floors was $30,000. So.
If we used to do it every other year or something, then we used to, we
Yeah.
used to do it every other year.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I think, if you wanted to do it as a block of time, I'm all for that. I mean, like I said, it is an expensive part of the facility that, obviously, I think, you want to make sure that you're kind of controlling it to some degree. And I think if you did it in the blocks of time, you would attempt to control it.
So do you think you can bring that back next time?
Yeah.
Some suggestions?
Yeah, let me take a look at what other districts looked at as far as their rentals and stuff like that. Let me just do a little research like I did, and that's easy to do because I have all that paperwork in my office, and I can bring it back.
Okay. Let's move on to meal
Meal
charging.
charging. So this is a little bit convoluted. So our food service director from Ed Advance and I have been working for the past year or so. Every 3 years, the district, well, all districts who participate in the federal program need to go through a review. So we started that process last year. And part of that is that the federal government looks at our wellness policy, they look at health, nutrition, education, they look at things well beyond food service, but including food service. Right now, Becky and I so we will be bringing the wellness policy within the very near future with some recommendations and requirements that need to be amended or added per the federal government. However, right now, this was a request by Becky. She is working directly with these folks. And because we are a CEP district, Our current policy does not reflect that. So we have a meal charging policy, but in our policy, nowhere does it stipulate that we're a community eligibility provision district. So we need to say that. She also, bless you. She also asked if we would consider adopting Shipman's meal charging policy and adding the language to that. So what you have in your packet is you have our current policy and Shipman's policy, but the language that she's asked me to insert is only on page 20 of 27 in the Shipman policy. It's the third paragraph down. It starts with, in accordance with federal law, the board will notify parents and guardians of its participation in CEP when applicable. So really, for our purposes tonight, it's really just, could we add this language? We're asking the board, could we please add this language? Do we add it to our current policy? I can show you where. And then look at these policies in their entirety at another time. But Becky said, because of the work that she's currently doing with the federal folks, she needs to be able to demonstrate that we've got this somewhere. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
I say Shipman's policy and with that. What do you say?
Shipman's policy.
John?
Shipman's policy.
Okay,
Okay, perfect.
bring it to the
Got that,
board.
Maris?
And bring it to the board next week.
Yep, bring it to the board
Okay.
next week. Okay. Topics for future meetings. We'll be bringing the facilities and the fees and our crosswalk. Yep. Comments for the good of the order, Mark?
No, I don't have it.
Thank you, Tom and Ken and Sue for bringing this. It's great, and thank you for doing so much research on this.
Yeah, thank you to all of you. It continues to be informative. I have a lot of- I read it.
Informative, that's it.
Very much so. The things
Lengthy, but
the things we think of as we go.
I do have, can I
Go ahead.
We are at TMS, we are having April 30th, we're doing a color run for anybody who wants to run 2 miles around our campus. So it'd be great to see people there, even if you're not running. So
What time?
it's 9 o'clock in the morning.
That is Saturday,
It's a Sunday.
Sunday.
What day?
It's a Sunday, April 30th.
Is it your cross country route?
It is a modified cross-country route.
Cool.
2.01 miles.
When you say it's a color run, are the
Colored bursts.
Colored dye.
Oh.
We've already gotten that cleared. It's healthy. It's okay.
No, I thought, do I wear a special color?
What does that mean?
Yeah, this is you could, if you email me, I can give you a registration, so you could register. It's,
Can you just send it to us?
I don't know if I can.
Get it to
Yeah,
Sue and she can send it to all the
Yeah,
board
yeah.
members?
Yeah.
How's that?
It's on our. It's on our
Okay, and I
Facebook.
think Shelley has it too, so I can send it to the board.
Perfect.
Sure.
Thank you.
You'll get shirts, given runner shirts, so you won't destroy your own clothes. But if you do it, please bring your worst sheet in your house to put in your car, because you'll be
Covered in color.
You'll be covered in color.
Cool. The kids will love
The kids will love it.
it. Yeah.
Ellen will too. It's her kind of thing.
Ellen's driving.
Sure. It's washable, Cole, right?
Yes, all washable. Cornstarch, it's all good.
Cool.
We hope so.
Okay, no, great meeting. Thank you guys for all your hard work on this.
No, thank you. Great.
lot.
Thank you, John. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sam.
That's what I was gonna say. Thank you, John, for all your work on the policy. So,
Thank you, Rachel.
Rachel,
Thank you,
Joanne,
Marissa.
Marissa, anything? Yes, thank you, everyone. This was, the information is just great and policy is tough. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
John and Kathy. At 8:03. Hey, less than an hour.